Hi friends, popping in. We're going to talk really quick about some of the things you can be planting right now. I'm doing a whole podcast episode, so you're kind of getting a little early look into this, but I am currently planting a lot of things. Obviously, this is very specific to zone 5 and zone 6, but you could be doing these as well in zone 7. Even some of these you could succession plant in zones 8 and 9. So there's quite a few of these that we can keep going. If you're in zones that are colder, you might be on the edge of being too late on some of these things. So hurry out and do this really quick. I'm always trying to think of all of you. But we're just going to run down the list. And I think some of this will be really helpful because, maybe you didn't even realize you still had time to plant some of these things, and you do. Or you may be thinking, how many times do I plant these things? Stuff like that. So I'm going to go over all that and try to make it quick since we're all busy. But first of all, you guys can, if you haven't planted beans yet, and you were like, oh, I really want to do some runner beans. Some of you could be too late on that. If you're in a warmer climate, you still have plenty of time. If you're in a cooler climate, you're probably too late. If you're in a climate that has, that's kind of in between, give it a go. It may work, it may not. Depends on how fast they germinate. It depends on a lot of things. But bush beans, you can be succession planting every week if you would like to. You can continue to plant and plant and plant in order to have a lot of beans. But these are bush beans, so typically some bush beans that you could do this with that could be saved as dried beans are black turtle beans. They grow as a bush. I'm actually about to plant some, and that could be a good variety. But you can also just do classic green beans, green or yellow wax beans, anything like that. They do really well, and you have plenty of time for them. The next thing are some flowers. You still have time to plant zinnias, cosmos, and marigolds. They all should be really happy. The other ones are calendula and nasturtium. You can still plant all these flowers from seed. So go ahead, get it done, get them out there. If you're wanting to plant sunflowers, probably don't have enough time unless you're in a warmer climate. You really need 100 to at least 90 days to get a blossom, but usually it's about 110 to 120 days. So we're kind of at the end. But these other ones, you still can get blooms. You still can get beautiful plants. You have plenty of time. Now, the other thing, lettuces are tricky in this heat, but there are plenty of heat-loving greens that we can grow through the summer. If you want to grow less heat-loving greens, you're going to have to do it in the shade. Place of preferably good shade all day, and or else they're gonna start getting bitter. Even your kale could start getting bitter. Sometimes I will trim my kale back pretty heavily, use it for pestos, not for, fresh eating as much. So those are some really good options for you if you want to. But if you want to keep growing those things. But if you want to go heat loving, there's a great mix from Fruition. One of my other favorite ones is the Rocky Top mix from Baker Creek, and that one has always been really successful for me. Hudson Valley also makes a great mix as well. These ones are really great to grow. You don't have to shade them from underneath a tomato plant, but if you want to, you totally can. I'm going to be growing some of mine that way, because I think it really helps with mulching the plant, which is really important. Okay, so the next one is our squashes. This is finally, I'm succession planting my summer squash. This allows me to offset or consider for squash vine borers, squash bugs, and downy mildew, all issues for summer squash. But by succession planting, I should be able to still get myself a great crop without as much concern about some of these pests and bugs and things like that. But you can also be planting, this is the perfect time to direct seed your pumpkins, especially pie pumpkins, delicata, butternut squash, you're kind of at the edge. Honey nut would be really good. Center cut squash, any of these varieties, acorn, all of this, it's time. The 1st of July is really when we want to start really pushing at this, and we want to be done by the middle of July. And that is for us in zone 5 and zone 6. If you're colder, push sooner. If you're warmer, you can plant at any point and you're fine. You also will want to plant your melons at this time if you haven't. So this is a great time. We should be clear of the squash vine borer here in the next few weeks. So putting the seed in the ground now is a great way to avoid them. Next, we have cucumbers. If you haven't put your cucumbers in, get them done. They are very fast to mature. So you usually can do 2 successions of them, one earlier in the season, one mid-season, and have great crops. So get them done, plant them, trellis them, enjoy them. And then carrots. You can succession plant your carrots at any time right now. Every 2 weeks is a great kind of rule of thumb. They're not going to germinate super well in the heat, but they will come up. Beets, you can do the same thing, or any like root veggie, but they're going to struggle in the heat of summer with germination. So sometimes I'll push them towards the end of July, beginning of August. Sometimes we get a few cooler days in there that allow for that germination process in the soil to cool enough that it will work better. Turnips are a little tricky. We won't be planting true fall crops until the end of July, like middle to end of July, other than these longer season ones. If we're talking root veggies, we're going to start doing them mid-July to the end of July to the beginning of August, depending on what it is. Carrots need longer, beets need less, turnips need less, and radishes need even less. So you want to look at those maturity points on those seed packets, and that's going to tell you kind of when you should be planting them. It really should be about that minimum amount of days before the first frost. So you really want them to get some germination. You really want them to get some greens so that they can have everything they need to kind of withstand that potential first frost. Then lastly, you can be also planting, this is a great time. I would avoid planting perennials at this point. Perennials they want it cooler, more rain, things like that in order to establish. So instead of thinking about those things, you want to avoid perennial plants. A lot of you, it's the last call for apples and fruit trees, things like that, because it's going to get too hot for them to establish great root systems. We want to wait until August and September to do that. Now, if you're in a cooler climate, you have a lot more variability. If you're in a warmer climate, definitely wait toward the fall. It's really good to establish perennials during a cooler season. Then I just, some of the other things I would avoid at this point, you don't want to put in potatoes. You're really past the point of tomatoes unless they're a large plant that's ready to go in. Eggplant, peppers, all of that, you're kind of past it. You can still put in annual flowers. You can still put in any herbs, absolutely any herbs. But you don't want to be really doing any perennial flower. I mean, you could, but it's probably, you gotta wait. I'm trying to think. Lastly, I'm looking at my garden. It's out there. I wouldn't be planting any, one thing you do want to do. Right now is a great time to start thinking about your garlic order. You don't have to make it, but you're going to want to make that garlic order by the end of the month, this coming month, like July. So definitely be kind of doing your research, figuring out what you like, what you don't like about the garlic variety you grew. And yeah, I am making your order very quickly and very soon. But we should be starting to harvest potatoes, garlic, all of that in the next few weeks. It's crazy to think about. Well, my potatoes probably won't be till the end of July, but garlic will for sure. I just started harvesting it at our school garden and drying it on the fence. So I think it's going to be another few weeks, and then I should be starting to harvest my own. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, you can do succession planting of peas, but you're going to want to wait till it gets a little cooler. But I'm going to do one of these every time I kind of am going through a major planting period of time, so you guys can kind of get an idea and an insight into what I'm actually planting. I would normally have done this outside, but it was super windy today. So I didn't want to fight the wind and wanted a nice, quiet conversation together. So I hope this is helpful. If you have questions about something specific you're thinking about planting or whether you can still plant something, leave it in the comments below. I'm happy to help you. Just let me know. Thanks, you guys. And I'm going to share a garden tour. So look for that one.